On your mark, get set, go.
When authors don't credit other people that did work that inspired them, it's anti-artist. Artists are inspired by other people. They shouldn't be taking from other people and not crediting them.
Based on what you said, Jude, here's the beautiful thing I think you care about. I heard honesty and integrity and generosity of spirit and lifting art up and letting it shine on its own merit.
This is Improv in Real Life. I'm Jude Treder-Wolff. I've worked in mental health for 40 years, and in that time, the world has changed completely. Technology has transformed how we communicate, connect, even how we work. But in our relationships, change doesn't happen that fast. That's where improv comes in. Improvisers learn to create together without a plan, and they do that by learning a set of skills. Anyone can learn these skills, and they translate directly to life. In this podcast, we'll explore how improv can help us navigate the speed of life. And together, we'll explore how to face change with creativity, agility, and a sense of play. A few years ago, I did a presentation about the stages of change at a national mental health conference with a musician as my co-presenter, and our plan was to get this group to write a song together, something they didn't come there to do, they didn't know how to do, and frankly, they didn't want to do. That's often how we feel when we are faced with a big change. We get overwhelmed, we reject it, or we think we can't do it. My guest, Belina Raffy, uses comedy and improv to help reframe our mindset around this. And she tackles big, complex, scary topics in her work, like climate catastrophe and the sacrifices we might have to make to avoid it. If you struggle with change, as we all do, you will find this conversation helpful. Oh, and by the way, at the end of that workshop, the group had not only learned the basics of writing a song, but had created one together, and everyone took home a recording. This podcast is brought to you by LifeStage. LifeStage provides opportunities for people to gain skills and knowledge for navigating today's uncertain world. The capacity for creativity, connection to new ideas and other people, collaboration, and community building. For more information, visit lifestage.me.
My guest today is Belina Raffy. I have admired Belina for many, many years. I have heard her present at Applied Improv Network conferences, always been inspired, walked away feeling both awestruck by the method, but also the seriousness of the topics that she tackles. And we're going to get into that today in the most lighthearted, fun way possible, because improv! Welcome, Belina.
Thank you so much, Jude. It's such a pleasure to be here and be with you and get to play together. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, you were one of the first people I thought of for this podcast. And what I so value about the way you approach the topic we're going to talk about today impacts everyone on the planet. And at the same time, we go about life as if, in many ways, as if it isn't happening. In the ordinary days of many, many people, we talk as if climate change isn't really happening or impacting us. And I know that your world, you're networking with a bunch of people where it's very much happening. Yeah. So let's have your take on what is really happening. And then let's talk about how you use improv to, let's bring that down to the level of the day-to-day of people who are not face-to-face with it the way the scientists and others are that you're dealing with.
Sounds great. Sounds good. So I really feel like there's a huge and interesting shift since the pandemic lockdown with people. I feel like what we could do before the pandemic, I feel like people are so much closer to fight or flight right now. And
you are so right about that. I'm just going to inject that as a mental health professional.
Yes.
But it is so true that there is a trauma brain operating on the planet, and it is a big problem. And continue. Okay. Go ahead.
So it makes our work interesting in a way, because we've been doing this for years, right? We've been doing improv, applied improv, and helping people to use those capabilities in organizations, in making the world better, making collaboration better. And there's an interesting situation, I don't know if you're hitting it, where it's like we have been building capacity for right now, like all the climate stuff, all the social stuff, all the political stuff that's happening. And there's like a drop off, a really interesting drop off on uptake in terms of public workshops and everything. And I think part of it is people are so fatigued. I think they're economically stressed. I think there's all these things happening where the idea of doing anything that is genuinely transformational is like, oh, I can't. I'd rather doom scroll on my phone than do that. And so I'm playing with it. I don't know, like, what are the other elements that people can understand this is nourishing? This is not lip service to, hey, it's empowering, but now go back to your box. You know what I mean? But this is like actually useful for them in their daily lives, in their work, in how they work with their kids, all of these different things. And I'm playing with, like, this is an oasis where you can really hear who you are before the world kind of bundled on all of these identities and stresses and stuff. How can you get clear on, like, who you actually are? So I do a few things. I've worked with applied improv for organizations like the Red Cross Climate Center, and there's a sustainable development organization in Germany called GIZ, and I've worked with their leaders on collaboration, and it's great for complexity as well, because all the practices of short turn taking and being present and all of that is really good for that. One of the things that I did to make sure that I'm a good improviser, that I'm not just like, the world needs to improvise out there, but I can't, I get frozen, is I let go of having a home completely, and I traveled all the way around the world to, I think it was 11 different countries in 3.5 months, teaching applied improv, but really improvising my life. So I wrote an ebook called Using Improv to Save the World and Me, in parentheses. And so I wanted to make sure that I wasn't just trying to change people out there because I needed it in here, like that I wasn't frozen like that, but that I actually pulled the practice really deeply into my own life. And so that's the basis from which I'm approaching this work that happened about like 11 years ago that I did that trip. And it took me like 5 years to write the book because I'm an improviser and dyslexic and all of that stuff. And then working with sustainability organizations, I saw that there was something that was needed beyond the improv, which was this practice of finding genuine lightness, because just being present, connected, and generous can be really heavy if you don't have that lens. So, I love The Daily Show and Jon Stewart and John Oliver and all these guys. And 10 years ago, I started this thing called Sustainable Stand-Up, where we start off very improv-y, and then we shift to stand-up-y. But it's stand-up that has a sponsoring energy of love. And I have like 4 principles, and then I'm going to be quiet and in the sustainable stand-up, which is I'm holding a space, and it takes 6 weeks before the show. I'm holding a space where I help people get to, I love myself, I love the audience, the system is silly in whatever kind of issue they care about. So it's not just climate, it's also social issues or however they want to make the world a better place. And then here's what would be awesome, because I feel like so much in the comedy realm around climate is like illuminates a devastating truth, and then there's an energetic thud. It doesn't give us any place to go, and we're just like, oh. And so I'm helping the experts show us, remind us what could beautiful look like again. So that's what I'm up to.
What a beautiful concept. What could beautiful look like? I love that. There's a few things you said that I'd like to just jump a little deeper into,
Sure.
if you don't mind. One is, I want to write this down forever, a sponsoring energy of love.
Yeah.
And as a person that works I'm more in the storytelling side, but I do comedy with storytelling.
Yeah.
So my stories are comedic stories most of the time. They're not always comedic, but I like the comedy.
Yeah.
The truth lands in people's hearts if there's love.
Yeah.
The truth bounces if there's armoring around somebody's heart.
Yeah.
Stories and really good comedy, all the comedians you love, I also love.
Yeah.
And there are, comedic storytellers. And I think that your sustainable stand-up is a great model that we should talk a little bit more about, that somebody might even apply in their real life struggles, just in framing their real life struggles in some way, even if they never want to get up on stage and do it, but to think about in this way, what's the fearful truth, the fear that I bring to some difficult truth, and how do I work my way to a sponsoring energy of love? Or do I just choose a sponsoring energy of love that then that kind of melts that armoring? What do you think about that?
That's a lovely, lovely question. Okay, so there's a few things there. One is having taught it for 10 years, over 10 countries and over 50 times in those countries and online. I've worked out, and especially going through the pandemic, I've worked out quite quickly that I make sure that people aren't focusing on a topic for which they have an open wound.
Good point.
Good start. Because it would be unfair to have them try to make that funny, and that would create toxic positivity, which we're not after. So it's like, okay, pick something that you still care about, but it's not an open wound. And then, because that also means they have flexibility, and so it means that I can teach approaches, mindsets, and things like that for that thing that's less on fire, so that going forward, they might have a shot as they deepen that practice to seed it into that. So that's one thing. And the other thing for me is my intention. I mean, I love in a secret way that I'm kind of healing a little bit what stand-up does in the world. Do you know what I mean? Because everyone says that the show feels amazing. Like, I IMC it now, and I'm like, let's fill this room with as much love, light, and laughter as we possibly can, and that we're all supporting. And people come out of there feeling like, oh my God, that is so different from the open mic nights where people are just like, all their toxins are coming out onto the audience. You know what I mean? Like, this feels really good. It's about meaningful stuff. And the people, because they're in a good state when they're doing it, people can listen to them. And what you said about processing information and fear, it's similar to what John Oliver and stuff does. You can get two really serious points across if you diffuse with the third. And people will remember it. But if you keep going along in that stressful thing, people will bounce it out. And so that's the practice. Some people initially are like, I'm worried because this isn't about making light of things. And it's like, no, it's actually about illuminating it and giving it in a package so that people can remember and feel safe to process stuff. And yet you've relieved their tension. So it means they don't block it out.
That's a great, you're saying the rule of three in comedy and translating it in this way to making something more memorable, right? Because we're able to let it in. Is there an exercise that we could do like this, just audio version?
Yeah. I mean, you've probably heard of I learned it from Kat Koppett, the rant activity. And I think the way that I do it is slightly different from her in terms of what I'm looking for as the output. But it's basically first, I usually set up where, okay, let's brainstorm 5 things that we love, and we put it on a piece of paper, and then 5 things that drive us crazy, that really irritate us. And then I invite people so we could do that if you want. That's the setup to it. Should we do that?
I would love to do that. I want to hear your version of that exercise.
Okay, cool. Yep. So let's, I don't know if you have paper and a pen or...
I'm ready.
You are.
I have a paper.
So first column is just draw a heart on the left-hand top of the left-hand column.
Okay, everyone listening, I just drew a heart.
And let's take 1 minute to brainstorm things that you like or love. So it could be puppies with fat tummies. It could be anything about work, whatever it is. It's the right thing in the left-hand column.
I'm going to do it out loud. I'm just going to do a stream of 5 things. Because I just did my gratitude list before I started with you today. 5 things. I love my 3 cats.
Yeah, nice.
Joe, Obi-Wan, and Leia. I love Star Wars. I guess you could tell that. I love farmers markets in the summer. I love my husband. I love comedy and improv.
Lovely. Beautiful.
A little on the nose.
Who was Joe in Star Wars?
Well, now, sadly, Joe just came along in our lives before we started naming cats after him.
I was like, which movie did I miss? Where Joe was like the central character. Fabulous.
It's my personal Star Wars, I guess. The Jedi Joe. Jedi Joe.
So nice. So yeah, that was a lovely list. And then on the other column, the right-hand column, you can draw like your best little grumpy face.
No problem. Grumpy face, done.
And so, yeah, let's hear 5 things that irritate you a lot.
5 things that irritate me a lot. My number 1 thing on my list this week are authors that don't credit other authors in their work and clearly are quoting them. People who drive rudely and scarily. I really hate plastic nowadays. It bothers me constantly. It's harder for me to find things to rant about.
That's lovely. What makes you mildly grumpy?
Just mildly grumpy. Mildly grumpy that being a person who's gluten-free and dairy-free, it's hard for me to find food in a lot of places. and I am I'm struggling
What's
for
something
number 5.
around your cats that makes you irritated?
Okay, I've got one. Thank
You're
you. I'll say as quickly as I can. Joe is 18 years old
Wow.
and has decided that he wants to go outside for the first time in his life. And he's got kidney disease and he's got arthritis. So I want to give him everything he wants. So he stands by the door and cries. And I put a leash on him and I take him for walks 3 times a day. And it's
Okay. Hang
not.
on. Okay, so you got juice behind that one about with Joe. So the next thing is, I would invite people to look at their list and pick one on a scale of 1 to 10. Like 1, you don't really care, and 10 is you'd rip somebody's head off. Pick a 6. Don't pick a 10. Pick a 6. Do you think that Joe wanting to go outside is your like 6 out of 10? Does that feel right?
I could do that one. I'm probably people quoting other people, they're not giving them credit because I have more
Okay,
energy
let's
around
do that one then. Okay, so here's what's going to happen. I'm going to say on your mark, it's at go. I'm going to time you for a minute. I'm going to gently ring this bell after a minute. So if you could stop when you hear the bell, but just be really specific and grumpy and tell us everything that makes you grumpy about authors that don't credit. On your mark, get set, go.
When authors don't credit other people that did work that inspired them, they're basically stealing, delegitimizing people on whose shoulders they stand, that they wouldn't even probably be famous if this other person hadn't put that information out there. It's not only unfair and cheating, it's anti-artist. I mean, artists are inspired by other people. They shouldn't be taking from other people and not crediting them. Actually, it's happened to me. So, of course, this is personal. But I also resent even Einstein quotes that didn't belong to Einstein. Just don't say Einstein said that energy moves life things forward. It didn't happen. He didn't say those things. Try to be accurate. So either people use other people's work or they don't, or they make up stuff that other famous people didn't actually even say.
Beautifully done, ma'am. Thank you. Part of me is wondering, like, how much of that is AI slop. But yes, absolutely. Because I think that's exacerbating. So, but that's not the point of this exercise. So now, as your partner for this exercise, my job would be to respond in about 30 seconds with, based on what you said, Jude, here's the beautiful thing I think you care about and want in the world. So I'm not fixing your thing. I'm not joining in how irritating it is. I'm just saying, like, what is the beautiful values underneath? And I heard honesty and integrity. And Jude, I suspect you care about generosity of spirit and lifting other people up, lifting art up and letting it shine on its own merit. Hard work and honoring that. So those are a few of the things that I heard. And that's one of the activities that I do in the very first class in my comedy course.
I love that exercise so much. First of all, you got me, Belina. You got me. You get me. But it is a beautiful thing to hear that back. Yeah. It really is. And I am a little bit heated up about this topic for a few reasons. And I just want to say this. I want to comment about that from a mental health perspective in terms of working with not just like couples that live together and have to understand each other, but people who may be strangers to one another, but maybe want to work together on something, a political cause, a community cause, something where they care about it, but they may come at it from very different rage points.
Yes.
Like what's the thing that really animates you might not be shared. But to have people, there's a few things you're accomplishing with that exercise. One is the listening is so deep. It's taking the truth, the thing that the person said, and listening to the deeper truth behind it, which is beautifully done, expressing that back to them. And it really does make you feel heard and understood. So people could be intimate partners and still, I know I'm married for a long time, and I often have to remind myself that my husband approaches change in an entirely opposite way from me. Entirely opposite. Like I'll say, let's try the road not traveled. He'll say, there's a reason no one's going down that road.
What a lovely thing that the universe has put you two together.
Oh, yeah.
Good. Right.
And I'll have to do this exercise in my mind and say, right, he values precision.
Yeah.
He values details. He values these things. And then I say, well, maybe I don't value that enough. And then instead of us fighting about it, we're on the same page, but it wasn't a page either one of us would be on our own. And that's why I love this exercise. It brings you together to, okay, we're both in the same lane now, but maybe we wouldn't have been had it not been for this magical structure. So I want to just comment on that from my perspective of people coming
And
together.
I love what you said. I ran this. One of my weird and wonderful gigs is I get to work with middle managers in a global consulting group every once in a while. And it's like helping them play to connect. And I ran this activity. It's like a 3-minute activity. You know, they go out in breakout rooms and they come back. And one of the guys said, "This is the most I've ever felt heard from my colleagues in the 5 years I've been working for this company." So it is incredible, because when you're not sitting there trying to fix somebody or trying to join them, it's a whole different thing that can emerge.
It's really what, and Alan Alda said this, so I don't want to be like quoting Alan Alda and he's actually quoting someone else for after my rant. But
Especially because of your rant.
I'm right, because of my rant. I hope I'm not doing that. But he is a person who I heard say or saw a quote from him saying that true communication is listening to understand. And you just did that. That's what this exercise does. It's listening to understand, not to say, oh, but, or look at it this way. It's both things are true. That aggravates you and you care about these things. It's also a great example of what we were talking before about an armored heart versus an open heart. Our armored heart is a natural self-protection, right? Against these unfairness, injustice, things that piss us off, and someone can open our heart by saying, I hear you.
And one of the facilitation things with this one, it's very interesting, because I worked with Paul Jackson for years as well, and his solution focus approach, which I really love. And so often when we're doing the demo before I send them off into the thing, people will say, so I hear you like integrity and you don't want stealing, for example. And it's like, okay, how can we, for this particular activity, take that and you don't want? Because that pulls the person back into the anger. So how can you offer it clean without a negation? Because I love like George Lakoff's work of don't think of an elephant that we can't actually process and not. So even having that practice of how do we say things in a way of the positive way of framing it instead of what you don't want. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yes, I love the idea of framing it, making sure that people are mindful to frame it that way, actually for our own mental habits, just to learn this is a way to think. Yeah. This is a way to think that can be quite different than old habits. And as we know, like the language that we use builds a bridge even inside ourselves or a wall. Yeah. I have a question for you, and tell me if this tracks. You had laid out when you do sustainable comedy that you're starting with, like you're talking about a serious topic and you're infusing it with love so that there's lightness. Yeah. Is there a way we could talk about like 3 steps to doing that, or maybe take an ordinary serious thing in someone's life and apply it?
Yeah, I think so. I wanted to go back to this exercise, which I think kind of gets at least part of what you're asking. Okay. Which is societally, we're told women shouldn't get angry, or people shouldn't show their anger, so we push it down and it becomes depression. Or we're angry all the time and we get stuck in that way of being, and we're like, everybody's running away from us because we're angry all the time. And what I love about this particular activity is it's a way to transmute the anger. So it's not only something that you can do with other people, but it's also something you can do inside. And two of the things that I say when I run this activity in the course, one is like, if you have that grumpy uncle or something at Christmas, great time to practice, because it tends to take the heat out of the anger and just leave the light bit, which is really nice. And sometimes you need to get the heck out of there. Like there is a self-care, like you can't do this with everybody who's angry because there might be a different situation. So you need to be mindful. But there's that thing of the beautiful thing I care about and want. Sometimes you can do it internally. So what I love is it's not a pushing down of the anger so it becomes depression, but it's actually mining it for treasure. That if you share the treasure, more people will be like, well, I love that too. I like integrity in art. Maybe we can have a conversation. So it's the first piece, because a lot of the activists are so angry that they kind of alienate potential allies in the audience because they're just so on fire. And it's like, well, they're potential allies. We're all humans on Earth. How can we do this? So it's kind of bit by bit getting to the sponsoring energy of love. in the early classes, a bunch of dust comes up, like inner dust of like they try stuff, but it's quite angry or it's quite mean against themselves or whatever. It's just like, that's okay, that's part of the process or can be part of the process. And then my job as the coach is about what would be a beautiful difference in that. Like, what do you love about that? So seeing it from different angles to try to work out where is the genuine love. There was a guy that I worked with recently who was just on fire angry with billionaires and what they're doing to the planet. And it's like, what's the thing that softens you around even billionaires? Because there's certain ones that we know of that seem like so alone and so in pain and stuff like that. Like it doesn't dismiss or ignore the fact that they're causing quite a lot of pain, like that lovely hurt people hurt other people, but it's just seeing them as human. And I think that's really important in this increasingly polarized place, especially with human rights issues, with social issues, with climate stuff. And so, okay, so what's my process? It's kind of bit by bit helping people see what's there, checking that it's not on fire, but it's something they care about, seeing what flexibility they have for seeing it from new angles and playfulness, and then noticing the patterns. Like, what is the pattern that's been in your life since you were a little kid? Or what's a pattern that you love that you feel like is way over here, but actually really connects? So in a 5-minute set, people can usually talk about 3 different topics. And initially, I say, see what topics emerge and don't worry if they don't seem like they connect, because at some point your brain's going to go, boop, here's the bridge between that one and that one. Or, like I help them get there. But there is a real reason that their subconscious is going this and this and this.
That's the mysterious creative process. That's amazing that you can get people to make those that happens. It's such a beautiful thing when it happens. It's a snap. It's a dopamine rush.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we have 4 classes, and then I ask them to send me their draft, and it's like, okay, let it go, because I got to go through and just see what's there. And then we have a coaching session, and then we go back into the classes. And in the coaching sessions, I've had so many people say, oh my God, I was just talking to my therapist about that last week. How did you know? And I'm like, it's kind of in there. So there's something. And my intention is always, how can I help this person shine in their best, most beautiful way? And really, I talk about the processes like they're going to be in a cave for many weeks, feeling like I care about this and it's not funny and it's not funny. And then all of a sudden, in that dark cave, boop, a light goes up that only they can see because of their life experience. And it's like, share that with the audience. For me, too much stand-up is sharing all the darkness that they see in the cave. And it's like, the world's got enough of that, thank you. Like, we need that light that only you can see to help light our path to get there.
And I'm going to yes and you, and in somebody discovering the light that only they can see, it will be a universal something.
Yes.
It always is. If it's truly a dynamic and authentic discovery, it will become something that other people say, oh, and they connect without the effortful, when you can see, you don't want to see the writing, you want to feel the connection to the person that's sharing.
Yeah.
I love that process. So I want to share something with you that I have used with people when in smoking cessation work, that it sounds a little bit like what you're doing, but it's just another thing to offer to our audiences in terms of a process. And I'm just wondering if you connect with this in any way. So I'm a musician and I use this songwriting style it's called song structure. That's what it's called. So I would be working with a group of people that were forced to take these classes by their employer in order to reduce the amount of money they paid for their health insurance.
Oh, wow.
Because everyone, if they smoked, they were charged more for the health insurance. But if they took these classes, that cost would go away. And all they had to do was sit through these classes. So talk about grumpy faces. Like, the grumpy faces were the only faces. No one wanted to be there, and no one wanted to stop smoking. And I, as a person who quit smoking when I was quite young, but I did smoke for 15 years. So I understand the attachment to it. I understand the identity that goes with it. And in terms of climate change and the things that you're working with, I see a parallel between the normalization of smoking in the culture that made me think smoking was fine and then made me addicted to it. And then why, like, to do something that's normal, which is not smoking, feels very strange.
Yeah.
To shift your whole brain around. We would do this exercise where I'd say, let's come up with a chorus. I'm not going to make you sing, but here's the chorus. Let's make up a chorus, why I love to smoke.
Yeah.
So the chorus could be, I love to smoke. I hang with my friends. I take a break. I love to smoke. Because they did always say, like, I just go outside. It's just us. I get away from everyone. That was one of the reasons I love to smoke. Then one by one, they would get up and do a verse. And the verse would just be a freestyle, like add other things, why I love to smoke. And then we do the chorus. And the chorus would repeat. We made it up together as a group. I love it. It makes me have fun. It gives me a break. It gives me release from my stress. And then it would come to the fourth person in the group, say, and that person would have to do the bridge. And the bridge would be, on the other hand, smoking does give me headaches. And then someone else, the next person would say, smoking is very expensive.
Yeah.
And I would love when they would say this, because we would teach them this. I found out that smoking is completely manipulating my brain.
Yeah.
They learned that from us. And that would be very much a thrill for me when they would say, and they would do a list of, on the other hand, these are all the other things I'll admit. And then we do the chorus, but I love my smoking. I love it. I love it. And it's a little bit like I thought of that as you were talking, because it's a little bit of that same thing. It's that these things are true. These other things are also true. Yeah. And I'm not going to tell you which one to choose, but now we've laid it all out there.
Yeah.
And we now know both of those things go together. And I would also find that the social piece of smoking, and I found this was true for myself too, that my whole social life changed when I quit smoking. My life was changing. I was involved with somebody who hated smoking, so that got better. But a lot of people were uncomfortable that I used to hang out with and were uncomfortable with that change. And I do think when there are things like, it's a weird, not as personal, but more the global thing about really recognizing that climate change is impacting all of us doesn't feel real to a lot of people in their day-to-day. But if they were using your exercise, say the list of things I know about it or things I don't know about it, or things I think are happening or things that I don't know, if you would use the 5 things list or the song structure, I bet people would come up with ways it's impacting their lives without making them have to feel like either shocked or guilty. I do find that's what the smoking thing, people would feel shamed, shocked, or guilty if you scared them with the information.
Yeah, it's a really interesting parallel because there's also, I understand from what I've read that there is a manipulation in the chemistry of some of the cigarettes to amp up the addiction quality.
They're 100%.
So I think in a similar pattern, the responsibility of it is, you better recycle. And if you don't recycle, you're going to, but it's actually, can we push this up? Like, fine, we'll recycle, but can we push this higher up the chain so that the government is doing more thoughtful things? So I think it's a similar pattern of like, how can we have responsibility and that it's not our sole responsibility? Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Because that's part of the overwhelm that really does shut people down. Is the overwhelm is, I'm not doing enough. And it does help. So in the parallels between, we've normalized all these ways that we just pollute the world. They've become part of everything we do. So either people feel guilty, shocked at what's really happening that makes us shut down, or deeply ashamed. And that's not exactly, it can be motivating for a while. But what I think you're offering is, let's look at all that. Those are true things. And at the same time, we're going to bring lightness and fun to that information, which is, that complexity is not easy to achieve. And I know that you're doing it, and you've spoken quite a lot about the unique value of improv. And I know that improv comedy, the way you're doing comedy, the unique value of those two forms to dealing with complex issues.
So when I did the round the world living improv thing, what really became clear to me is, for me and the way that I teach it and the way that I live it, improv is a secret love technology. So it's a secret as a playful thing, but it's a secret love technology because it's designed to help people who are afraid to be connected, generous, and present with each other. And so that's the reason I brought it into the sustainability space, because when I first saw An Inconvenient Truth, I'm sitting in the audience by myself, and because I love watching movies by myself, and I literally, I wanted to get a big gun, get a Hummer, and go shopping. And I'm like, that can't be the right visceral response to this film. So for me, it's like, I need to bring improv in as a loving, connecting thing where we don't go into our lizard brain, but we can stay in the prefrontal cortex. And the same thing with, like, if you're a normal person, the idea of doing stand-up comedy scares the heck out of you. But if we can do it in a really loving way that feels great, where you're present, connected, and generous, that means that you can now go face the inherently frightening things that you're looking at and researching and do the same thing with the audience. And that's what I'm after, is the ability to do that. And in the prefrontal cortex, to think more creatively about our human responses to the issues instead of coming from a fear and scarcity place.
It's so empowering to feel that it's okay to be laughing and light about such important things and thinking about, and I think that you achieve that in whenever you've done workshops. I always walk away saying, wow. I sometimes have said, I remember you did a workshop in Montreal, and I remember how I felt walking away from it, which was, I can handle this. And that sometimes these issues overwhelm me because of probably my Catholic conscience that I was raised to have too much superego. And that can shut you down, and that can make a person feel like, I just can't handle it. So we put it to the side rather than feeling I have the juice and I'm not alone.
Yes. Yeah. And there's a systemic component to that. And there's a book, I forget the guy who wrote it, called The Uninhabitable Earth. I think that's what it's called. And I made it to like chapter 2, and I was in a ball for 2 weeks. And I'm like, I can't, and it made me angry. Because what I care about is people being in a good enough state to actually make wise choices. But if you're knocking a bunch of people out where they can't do anything, that seems like at this time, so I do work with space scientists who are looking at satellites, using satellite data from space and looking at Earth observation and all of that stuff. So I've worked at that level of what the science is in terms of climate change and climate modeling. I've also worked with agronomists who work with soil in Central America and shifting groups from slash and burn farming to organic agroforestry, and they're changing things at landscape level. And now, so I've seen stuff from like soil to space in terms of what the data is and what we can do. And I feel like zooming in on the we're doomed doesn't get us anywhere, and is just a self-fulfilling, and is very convenient for the people who are in power and benefiting from the way that things are right now. So it's like, how can we really do this in a way that honors that life has joy in it, and it, you know what I mean, like, and can have joy in it and should have joy in it, and we can get good stuff done. Yeah.
Well, it's a fine line to walk when you really know, the truth. So it's so interesting that Al Gore was trying to do such a consciousness-raising piece of work, wins an Oscar. Yeah. And for someone like you that cares deeply about this issue, that's deeply engaged on this issue, it wasn't helpful.
What it did was it woke me up to, this is what this scene needs as an improv. You know what I mean? Like, something's right off in the scene, and it really needs this. So for me, it was great because it spurred me on to really, because I kept, doing creativity workshops for organizations and universities and stuff, but my heart was in sustainability and changing the way we do business and all of that. But it was like on the margins. And when I saw that, I'm like, let me go through the door with that one now.
Well, I'm wondering about at scale. So Al Gore, being a very famous person, gets this notoriety. And his film gets seen by a lot of people. And I just wonder about, like at the beginning when you brought up the pandemic and the fact that there's this international trauma. Yeah. And as a therapist, I've been very aware that we have not dealt with it. As a society, we have not dealt with what that did. All the losses continue. And the idea that we just we don't even agree that it actually happened. Like as a group consciousness, there's a bunch of people that say, well, it didn't really even happen. So we don't even have a shared truth on it in some ways. That is just what trauma does. It fractures us. It fractures us internally, and it fractures us as a group. And it's a concerning thing that this film, which was very important and shared very important information, in some ways it can contribute to the fracturing because people will just split off and say, I can't handle it. It's too much for me. And then they just demonize him and the movie. And then we just go on doing what we were doing. That's why I always think about the smoking thing, because I would hear someone rasping on a commercial from smoking, and I'd say, "Oh, I'm so glad that's not me." But when you're in it, you don't think that's me
Yeah.
or I'm doing that. It's a strange way we have of fracturing, splitting off. And I just bringing it back to the improv story that we're telling, that improv accepts you where you are.
Yeah.
So if where you are is fearful, if where you are is maybe in flat out, I don't think that's a problem for me, or it's not something that I even need to deal with. We accept that, we receive that, and we build on that fact, that truth for you. And using your exercise, I would say, we even say, so you value blank,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you could start with that. As long as we're listening, because that is the piece that it's a concern. Do we have enough time to build? But anyway, I'm just rambling now. So
No. So you're facing a very amplified issue in the United States, which is starting to happen in Europe, but it's not as bad yet, which is the what is truth? And getting, demonizing science and demonizing all these different things. And one of the books that I'm reading, We Are Free to Change the World, about Hannah Arendt. And, she talked in the 50s about how that piece of of fracturing and not believing that there's a truth, or there's so much disinformation, people don't know how to read any situation, is a step towards totalitarianism. And that's, I think we're all wrestling with that. What I love is that traditionally, stand-up comedians have permission to tell the truth, even though society might not be ready. So, there's Bill Hicks and there's George Carlin and all these people who were just extraordinary. And my piece of the work that I'm here to do is, I think because we're so close to fight or flight, but also how I'm geared, the difference is, instead of an angry comedy, if it's a loving comedy, because we need more yin, we need more softness around it, to be able to process some of that stuff that's really hard at this time. I think we needed the George Carlin when he was here. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
But now what's needed is different, because our psychology is different, because we need softness.
That is a wonderful place for us to sort of land this, because I think that is a missing piece we don't talk about enough. And let me add this. So I would say, you're saying we are so close to fight or flight, agreed. And the heart opening piece of comedy, meaning we're going to connect through these truths, but we're going to do it in this way. And I would add, we go from fight to flight. What helps with that is face to face.
Nice, yeah.
And what improv can offer, and storytelling and comedy, they are live. We are doing this together, and we're doing it face to face. And that is an antidote to a lot of misinformation, a lot of things, like what social media can do, which is a miracle in so many ways. And there's problems that we need to solve. But the face-to-face is an irreplaceable gift that we give each other that I think can overcome a lot of these barriers. And so that is my mission in life, is do a podcast face-to-face with you.
I love it. For years, I did other stuff online, but I didn't want to do the show online. And during the pandemic, it's like, okay, we got to do the show online. So we
that is face-to-face, though. That is face-to-face.
So we did playful things of me as the MC would raise the mug, and then somebody else would raise the mug, and it would look like it jumps across to the other people. I had this weird and wonderful thing happen where the year that Russia invaded Ukraine, there was an alumni from my course from Russia who does sustainability stuff based in Turkey, and she's awesome. And she had booked the top English-speaking comedy club in Moscow and organized the top 9 sustainability ladies in Russia to take my course, and we were going to do the show there. And then the war kicked off, and we're like, oh, okay, so we're not going to do that anymore. So it took a year, and some of the ladies had to flee Russia, and some of, are in different places and stuff. And we ended up a year later doing an online version, and we had, at the last minute, a Ukrainian lady who was based here who had fled. So it was I think it was 6 Russian ladies and 1 Ukrainian lady doing this course together. And it was so beautiful to hold a space where they were gentle with each other, where they really listened to each other, where they didn't take on the major elephant in the room, but they did everything else to really, because some of them were still in Russia. We didn't want them to be hauled off or whatever. Yes. But there was this amazing thing that happened during the online show, and you can imagine there were many more Russians in the online show than Ukrainians, but I had each one have a designated laugher. And I swear in the designated laugher, I promise to support my friend, in their name, and laugh it out loud to anything remotely funny. And when we got to the Ukrainian lady, she added, I'm in Kiev. And then she did everything that I asked her to do. But it was such a powerful thing to be in the Zoom room full of mostly Russian people, to have this, like, it was just a really beautiful. So even face to face like that, I think you can get amazingly far even online with this stuff.
Yes. It's the real time
Yes.
connection. It's the face to, so because that's the best we could have during the pandemic,
Yeah.
and it was life saving.
Yes,
Soul saving, and it is face to face. And so that is such a phenomenal story, and I just can't thank you enough for sharing it. And I can't thank you enough for this conversation, Belina. You've been an inspiration to me for years, and now I got to spend this time with you. And I hope you're able to share some of the sustainable comedy with us in the United States at some point.
My first course was Baltimore, actually, and I had a NASA climate scientist in the course. That was where the pilot happened, and then I moved back to Europe. But I have an online course that is in Europe's evening, so it's like lunchtime or morning time in the US, and I do that on purpose so that anybody in the US who would really like to join can join.
So we will put it in the show notes, but do you want to share with everyone listening how they can find you?
Yeah, so I have 3 websites. The one, if you're looking for the sustainable stand-up, is easy, sustainablestandup.com. And there's a course starting on the 15th of September that is the one that's online. I think there's like 2 or 3 places left if people want to jump on it fast. But that's where I'll do kind of more. And if people want to connect with me on LinkedIn, that's great. I also have a website called Giggling with Earth. And I've started a new course that is kind of taking what I've learned from sustainable stand-up and what I've learned from complexity, particularly something called human systems dynamics, and what I've learned from Tibetan Buddhism, and connecting it all together. And so you bring like a wicked issue that is driving you nuts, and we look at it through those 3 lenses once a week for 4 weeks to see what new things can you see in your wicked issue with those tools. So that is on gigglingwithearth.com.
Fabulous offerings. Everybody get in a class with Belina. It will change your life. Thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you so much. It's been a delight to be with you and an honor. Thank you so much, Jude.
That's it for this episode of Improv in Real Life. For more info about our guest and other resources, you can visit our show notes. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please follow or subscribe wherever you listen. And if you're feeling extra generous, write us a review or share with a friend. You can also find us on Instagram at lifestage_inc. And if you want to dive deeper into these concepts, please connect with me on Substack at Jude Treder-Wolff.
To be continued, to be continued, to be continued.
We need each other now more than ever. We need creativity more than ever. I hope these games and ideas inspire you in some way. And if they do, keep it going. I will too. See you next time.